My name's Al Bickham. I'm Studio Communications Manager at the Creative Assembly. I cannot think of a game we've made that has, over the years, warranted so much demand from the community for a sequel as Rome 2 has. So, yeah, it was the right time, and the team's in a good place to do it. We wanted to, we've got quite a big team now. We'd done a lot of kind of polishing of systems up with the Shogun 2, Fall of the Samurai kind of cycle of games, and it was just the right time to, push things wide again and embrace the ancient world.
Take those walls!
My name's Jamie Ferguson and I'm the lead battle designer for Total War Rome 2. I think we learned a lot of lessons from Shogun 2 in terms of, kind of how to make a game more streamlined, how to improve those combat mechanics and how to make the campaign game far more accessible to people. And, we felt that, with Rome there's something there that, we can actually kind of really bring to life and actually bring a lot more to it than we did with the original game. If somebody was to ask me, what's the difference between Rome 1 and Rome 2, I'd say everything. It is a complete overhaul of the entire game. It's bigger and better in every single way.
Stand back to back and defend our lands against the common foe.
If you go back to the original Rome, it's a fantastic game, but the entire Total War system has iterated a number of times since then. We've got much more intricate, smarter systems at work under the hood. So, our entire graphics engine has obviously improved quite a number of times up to the point where we are now. So it wouldn't make sense to trim away all those years of development and improvement just to kind of emulate Rome 1 again. What we've done is we've reimagined the ancient world using new technology and all the new techniques we've learned over the years.
Taking from Rome 1 to Rome 2, I think the way that the combat in the game works is completely different. The way that the campaign map itself is rendered and also the size of it is completely different. We now have a map that goes from Scotland all the way down to Saudi Arabia, from Spain all the way over to Afghanistan in terms of actual geographic scope. Now we have 9 very, very detailed factions. They have internal politics, they have traits, they have ancillaries. All of these things create a great deal of depth and variety to the gameplay, and also bring a human face to the kind of characters that you control. Even your armies themselves, can develop in ways that are very unique to each different culture, and the way that they fight and the way that they kind of manage themselves in the campaign game and on the battlefield are directly affected by that. You have a kind of inheritance that that army brings with it, and you no longer rely just on the units and their experience. You also have, for example, it's equivalent maybe to, for example, talking about the 101st Airborne Division or something like that. That they have a reputation and kind of strategies that they've used all the way through history, and that they have that kind of thing that they bring with them. And that's what we're doing with the armies themselves, and we're doing that with navies and armies. So you get this really strong feeling that what you're doing is something special and unique, and you're creating a world that is your kind of world, and it's based on the behaviour and the way that you play the game.
We've gone to great lengths to create a really incredible soundtrack, which was recorded by the Bratislav Symphony Orchestra and conducted by a guy called Jeff Atmajan, who was the orchestrator on Dark Knight and The Bourne Legacy and Sixth Sense as well. So super skilled guy, and he's helped us to produce this stirring, evocative soundtrack that it just sounds instantly Roman.
The actual kind of environmental content is enormous. We have, modelled every single environment that exists within the game. There are now, tens of thousands of battlefields to fight upon. We've tried to kind of really bring together the kind of way that the campaign map looks and the way that the battlefield looks, so that there's a very direct link between those two things. When you go for a beach landing, you can see where it is on the campaign map, and then when you're actually into the battlefield itself, you'll see those beaches and you'll see the mountains off in the distance, you'll see that forest that's just inland. All of those elements will come out at you, and you'll actually see that there's a direct relevance between what you do in the campaign map and what you do on the battlefield. And that goes for almost every area of the game. We try and bring a face to the game, that human reality, and that includes things like, for example, the wildlife that you see on the battlefields is also something you see in the campaign map. So for example, you can scare some birds out from trees if you've got men who are moving through heavily armoured and equipped at the time. If there's kind of, some combat going on, that might scare the deer away, and you see some deer running off into the distance. Those are kind of like nice polish items, but in terms of the actual combat itself, we're also kind of creating this feeling of really kind of, gutsy and visceral combat. All the kind of clinking you can hear from these guys wearing the Roman equipment around us, that's the kind of thing you'll hear on the battlefield. That's something that you'll experience, and you'll hear their voices, you'll hear them commenting to each other, like these guys are right now, actually. They'll just be talking about, what did you think about that drink last night, and so on. All of those elements will be going on while they're waiting for combat, and then when they're in the combat itself, they'll be commenting on the situation. You'll see them flinch, you'll see them turn to kind of react to kind of cavalry attacks from the flanks and so on. All of these things are just, they're things that never existed in the original Rome.
I betrayed my lover, brought ruin on my brother.
We now have the resources and the time and the knowledge to make more. So, we have different, we have a broader range of troops. I mean, we have, I think I mentioned earlier, we have 700 unique unit types in the game, across all the different factions and cultures. And, that just the breadth of kind of research we've had to go to ascertain what those units were in the ancient world. We're just in a better place to be able to bring them all out now.
Jupiter gives us strength! Quick march! Rally, men!
There have been a lot of challenges. I think bringing naval battles and land battles together has been obviously the biggest thing. Actually trying to create something that is easily controllable both on land and sea and combined, and making those kind of mechanics very obvious to the player is something that you don't want to hide things so that people can't find them. You want the depths to be something that they can access. The detail of every unit in the game, the way that men fight, the kind of abilities of those units, the way that men, for example, when they throw their pilum, for example, in the previous Total War games, the men would actually have to stop, pull back their arm, and then throw. That's no longer the case. You actually can charge into combat, and while you're charging into combat, throw those pilum directly at the enemy. You don't have to trigger that as an ability. That's something that will just happen as a result of charging the enemy. Again, so for things like, for example, kind of fire arrows and stuff like that, the effects are, far better than they were previously. And also in terms of combat mechanics, there's a lot more there than was previously. We've got all the kind of siege equipment that we had in the previous game, plus more. In terms of the environments, the cities themselves are far more detailed and far more involving, and the numbers of them. We now have, I think it's over 100 different settlements that you can fight on. The result of that is completely varied gameplay. It's not the same battle every time you're fighting. You don't have that kind of constant familiarity with the same thing. You're constantly having to evolve your tactics and change the way that you play the game.
I think we've made greater efforts to take the game out and show it to people and explain it to people than we ever have before. And I think the prologue, which you've been playing here, is a great example of how the game is actually quite friendly to new players. Once you know what you're doing, it's not in any way daunting. So and the prologue is really there to not just introduce new players to the way to play a Total War game, but also to introduce our veterans to you know, to aspects of the game that may be new to them. So, you know, and it's all, like I said, it's all wrapped up in a really nice little narrative-driven kind of mini campaign. So it's fun to play in its own right as well. So Rome 2 will be Total War Rome 2 will be out on September the 3rd worldwide.